The ridge had always been a place of legends, haunted tales passed down through generations in my small mountain town. But it was also a place of undeniable beauty, especially at sunset when the skies turned a fiery red, casting long shadows over the ancient rocks. It was our town's favorite dare to hike Red Ridge at night. Tonight it was my turn. I started my hike as the sun dipped below the horizon, the last light of day clinging to the peaks. The air was crisp, and a thin mist began to roll in from the valleys below, creeping between the trees and rocks. It was quiet, too quiet. I should have turned back then, but my pride pushed me onward. As darkness settled, I switched on my headlamp, its beam cutting through the fog. That's when I first heard a low growl, distant but distinct. I froze listening, but it was followed by nothing but silence. I convinced myself it was just a mountain cat and continued. The ridge grew steeper and the path narrowed. I was nearly at the summit when I heard the growl again, this time much closer. I spun around, my light darting across the gnarled trees. There, eyes reflecting at me, not one pair but several. Shadows moved, circling me. Fear clenched my chest as I realized I wasn't alone. Without warning, they attacked. Shapes, fast and fluid like smoke, darted in and out of the light. I couldn't see them clearly, but I felt their presence, ancient and furious. I ran, stumbling over roots and rocks, the creatures hot on my heels. The growls were deafening now, a cacophony of rage. I reached a clearing at the summit and thought to use it to my advantage. Heart pounding, I turned to face my pursuers, pulling out the flare gun I'd brought for emergencies. As the first shadow lunged, I fired. The flare shot through the air, and a streak of bright burning red struck the creature. It let out a shriek that split the night. The light from the flare seemed to burn them, to hurt them. Using this to my advantage, I fired repeatedly, each shot keeping the creatures at bay, their forms flickering like broken shadows whenever the light touched them. Eventually, the flare's light dimmed, and the creatures retreated into the darkness with one final menacing growl. Breathing heavily, I used the chance to escape, racing down the mountain as fast as my legs could. Back in town, I burst into the local diner, gasping for breath, my story tumbling out before a crowd of shocked faces. They listened, and when I finished, the old-timers nodded solemnly. "We told you the ridge ain't just haunted by tales," one remarked, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and respect. "The guardians of the mountain haunt it, and they don't take kindly to visitors after dark." That night, I learned that some legends are more than stories, warnings, and Red Ridge was where the past didn't just linger. It lived. I returned home that night shaken and forever changed. Sleep eluded me, my mind replaying the terrifying events over and over. By morning, my resolve had hardened. I needed answers. What were those creatures? Why did they guard the mountain? And why did the town seem to accept their existence so passively? I decided to visit Mr. Harker, the town historian and a reputed expert on local folklore. His house, cluttered with ancient books and artifacts, smelled of musty paper and time. He listened quietly as I recounted my encounter, his eyes not showing surprise but a deep, weary understanding. "Those you encountered," Mr. Harker began slowly after a long pause, "are known to us as the Keepers of the Veil. They are not of this world, but neither are they entirely separate. Long ago, this town was a sacred place, believed to be a thin spot where the barriers between worlds were weak. The Keepers are the guardians of these barriers, preventing them from crumbling." "Why don't they attack everyone then?" I asked, a mix of curiosity and fear lacing my voice. "They generally keep to themselves unless provoked. Nighttime on Red Ridge disrupts their realm. It makes them vulnerable, so they defend it fiercely," he explained. Armed with this knowledge, I felt a strange sense of duty stir. If these keepers had been guarding the ridge to prevent something worse from entering our world, they perhaps needed help. Maybe the town owed them respect rather than fear. I organized a group of volunteers from among the more adventurous or perhaps foolhardy townsfolk. Our mission was to set up surveillance equipment and warning signs around the trails leading to Red Ridge. We wanted to ensure no one wandered there by night unawares. The task was dangerous. We worked during the day, careful to clear out before dusk. Occasionally we would glimpse something watching from the shadows, but the creatures never approached in the daylight. Weeks turned into months, and the incidents of nighttime disturbances dwindled. The town slowly began to change its perspective on the ridge. It was no longer just a place of haunting fears. It became a symbol of respect for nature's unseen and unknown forces. However, my story doesn't end here. One evening, as I reviewed camera footage, I noticed an anomaly. Something, or someone, was walking up the path toward the summit of Red Ridge. seemingly unaffected by the keepers. The figure was shrouded and indistinct, and as it reached the summit, the camera feed flickered and went black. The following day, I headed up to Red Ridge, a sense of dread building with each step. At the summit, I found the camera smashed. Nearby, carved into the ancient rock, was a symbol I had seen in one of Mr. Harker's old books, a symbol of passage, of opening. The keepers hadn't just been guarding against intruders. They were guarding a gate, and now it seemed someone had opened it. As I stood before the defaced summit, the weight of what might have transpired pressed heavily upon me. The symbol carved into the rock was unmistakable. It signified a portal, an opening that should have remained sealed. Mr. Harker had always hinted at more significant dangers lurking beyond the veil, risks the keepers tirelessly guarded against. With the camera destroyed and the symbol fresh, whoever or whatever had dared to open the gate was likely still closed. I hurried back down the ridge, the urgency fueling my strides. Upon reaching town, I went straight to Mr. Harker's house. I found him in his study, surrounded by ancient texts and artifacts. "Mr. Harker, the summit. Someone has opened something. There's a symbol," I explained breathlessly. Mr. Harker's face paled as he listened. He shuffled through his books frantically, finally pulling out a dusty, leather-bound tome. He opened it to a page marked with a similar symbol and read aloud, "The Gate of Gedor. It is said to be a doorway to what was once sealed away by the Ancient Ones for the protection of mankind." "This isn't just any gate, then," I murmured, realization dawning. "No," he replied solemnly. "If the legends are true, this gate could lead to dimensions where creatures far more perilous than the keepers dwell. If someone has opened it, we must find out who and why, and most importantly, we must close it before anything comes through." Determined, we organized a small equipped group including myself, Mr. Harker, and a few others who had witnessed the oddities of Red Ridge firsthand. We prepared with every conceivable protection charm and artifact Mr. Harker could provide. We planned to reach the summit by day when the keepers were less active and investigate the gate. The air grew inexplicably colder as we climbed the ridge the following day. The wildlife was silent, as if anticipating something ominous. When we reached the summit, the carved symbol on the rock seemed to pulse with an eerie energy. Mr. Harker set up his equipment around the symbol, drawing what appeared to be an ancient compass mixed with mechanical components from his bag. "This should tell us if the gate has been opened and hopefully how to close it," he explained. Just as he activated the device, a chilling wind swept over us and the ground trembled. Shadows danced at the corner of our vision, forms twisting and writhing as if the air itself had thickened. Then everything fell silent. "We are not alone," whispered one of our companions. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw them, figures cloaked in darkness, their eyes shimmering with malevolent intent. They were not the keepers. These were the denizens of the gate, and they had been waiting for us. A standoff ensued, neither group moving. Mr. Harker continued his work, muttering incantations under his breath. The device began to whir and glow, the pulsing light matching the rhythm of the symbol. "It's stabilizing. Keep them distracted," Mr. Harker shouted over the growing wind. We brandished our charms and shouted challenges, holding the creature's attention. Finally, with a loud crack, the light from the device shot upwards, striking the symbol. The ground shook violently, and the creatures shrieked as they started dissolving into the air like smoke being sucked out of existence. The symbol dimmed, its energy dissipating. Mr. Harker, exhausted but triumphant, confirmed, "It's closed." For now, as we descended the ridge, relief and unease filled us. We had closed the gate, but knowing what lay beyond and that it could be reached would haunt us forever. The keepers returned to their silent vigil, perhaps with a renewed duty to guard what we had nearly unleashed upon our world. The adventure had ended, but the stories of Red Ridge were beginning. Now they included tales not just of ghostly whispers and ethereal keepers, but also of gates, dimensions, and the brave souls who keep the horrors at bay.